Okay, David? Looks okay.
Yep.
All right. So it's great to see people here. Thank you. It's including the panelists from our community organizations. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today. Um, so um, so yeah, as David mentioned, I'm a senior advisor with TCAT. I'm also the community partner co-lead of the Mobilizing Justice Theme 2 working group, which is focused on transportation modes. So every working group shares responsibility between an academic co-lead and a community partner co-lead. So the academic co-lead of Theme 2 is Dr. Megan Winters from Simon Fraser University, and I think she's here. Hi, Megan. And so today I'm here to, I'm happy to be here to tell you about some of the work that TCAT's been doing to assist the Mobilizing Justice research team by documenting the community response in Canada to issues related to transport poverty. So as both David and I have mentioned, so our role, TCAT's role within MJ is with the Theme 2 working group. And our objectives, you can see them here on the screen. We have had several objectives for Theme 1 or for year 1, which is just completed. We have some objectives leading into year 2, which David will go over. I'm going to be mostly just focused today on the second objective that we have, which is to document the advocacy activities that focus on improved multimodal transportation equity in Canada. And this is this second objective is what resulted in the catalog, which I'll go into in a bit more detail. So first wanted to just start with definitions. We get asked this a lot. What do you mean by community initiatives? And so for us, our kind of working definition is we're particularly interested in grassroots initiatives or programs or projects that are part of larger, more established organizations which have a wider focus. So we're really interested in those kind of the community response in particular to transportation issues. And transport poverty, the definition here on the screen is the working definition that we have as the Mobilizing Justice theme. Interestingly, not many of the community initiatives in Canada actually use the term transport poverty. So it's definitely something that when we were going through, we kind of put that, categorize the community response in that way, but it's a bit of a new term that is just starting to be used more often. But from the research, we know that that there are people across Canada experiencing transport poverty, and there's some estimates suggest up to 1.1 million or 1.3 million Canadians live in transport poverty. So here's the timeline of the catalog that we put together. So we were really fortunate to have a couple of great graduate student interns working with us. First, last summer, we had Sabat Ismaili, who did the initial scan of 245 community initiatives. And she collected variables on as many variables as she could on each of the community initiatives and put that into a shareable catalog. And then Sabat wrote a report called Community Initiatives Addressing Transport Poverty that was released at the end of the summer. And then this past summer, Kara Martin joined the team and expanded the number of initiatives in the catalog. We know we're still missing some. We're doing our best actually to keep a list of those. So if there are some that are missing, please let us know. But we now are expanded to 266, and Kara also increased the number of variables that we were tracking, including looking at the needs of equity deserving groups and how they are not being addressed. And so then at the end of the summer, we released an updated catalog and report. And those are available on the Mobilizing Justice website. We can put a link to it also in the chat. But there's a blog associated with both of those releases if you're interested. So I'm going to go just onto some of the key findings. So the greatest number of initiatives that we identified are based in Ontario, followed by Quebec, the Prairies, BC, Atlantic Canada, and there's the next grouping was national projects, and then there's one project that we found in the north. And to some degree, these percentages reflect the relative proportion of the Canadian population that lives in each region. For example, 39% of the Canadian population lives in Ontario, and that's where we found 36% of the initiatives. However, where the number of initiatives does not correspond to the relative population is in the Atlantic provinces. So while 11% of the initiatives take place there, only 6.5% of the population lives in that region. So there's a lot of community initiatives happening in the Atlantic compared to the population there. And there are also initiatives that I mentioned that are aimed to support people from across the nation. We have Anders Swanson here from Fellow Canada Bikes, and another example is Canada Walks. So both of these are national organizations. So we did some slicing of the community initiatives in different ways. So the first way we were really interested, and that's we're the transportation mode working group. So we were interested in how the community initiatives broke down in terms of mode of transit. So as you can see, there's a lot of community initiatives that are tackling, well, all of them, many of them are actually tackling access to transportation options beyond the car, especially active transportation. So you can see that the largest proportion of initiatives are focused on access to cycling, followed by public transportation, active transportation, which is both walking and cycling, sustainable transportation, which is both active and public transportation, car rideshare, a number of initiatives there, and walking. And so, such a preponderance of initiatives focused on active transportation really indicates a very high interest in and need for improving conditions for active transportation. So then we looked at the community initiatives by built environment. So half of the initiatives are found in urban environments, 8% are in suburban environments, and 8% are in rural. And so that's a total of 16% situated in non-urban environments. A third of the interventions cross-cut built environment contexts. So these would be, for example, initiatives assisting people traveling between different types of communities. For example, someone moving from an ex-urban environment to an urban environment. And then we looked at the community initiatives with equity deserving focus. So of the 266 in the catalog, 111 or 42% explicitly state that they provide services to one or more equity deserving groups for a total of 155 different equity deserving groups being served. And so close to half of those are geared towards people with low income, and the rest of the community initiatives focus on people with disabilities, racialized and Indigenous people, children and youth, seniors, and newcomers to Canada. So the classification of equity deserving groups or individuals was based on self-identified information available on the initiative's website or social media sites. So we may well have missed some. So I just wanted to just briefly go through a few examples of some of the community initiatives to give you a sense of what's what's in the catalog. And these are just some of in the first report that's about put together. There were a number of community initiatives highlighted that were of particular interest because they take a kind of unique approach to addressing transport poverty within different contexts. So I'll just briefly go through 3 examples here. So the first is the Iqa Safe Rides. It's the organization is supported by dozens of women volunteer drivers. The ride requests are filtered through the organization's Facebook group, which has 18,000 women members. And they've to date have over 80,000 rides that they've offered. So they were highlighted because they seem to be the only rideshare organization aimed at supporting the safety and mobility of Indigenous women and children. And the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls concluded that lack of access to safe and reliable transportation really played a role in the kidnapping of Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. The second example is Rescue Bike, which is located in Toronto, and this program supports their client base by introducing them to a healthcare setting and attempting to connect them to other services and programs. They've received funding from the City of Toronto Solid Waste Management Division, and they've expanded to run summer bike tune-up clinics in local Toronto community housing buildings. And they're highlighted because it's a model of a DIY bike initiative, one of many across the country, but this one is really kind of inventive in how it provides services to one of the populations that most adversely experience transport poverty. And the last one is the Rural Transportation Association. The purpose of the RTA is to provide a forum to share information and support for community-based transportation. It's open to all, but they prioritize access to seniors, persons with disabilities, and those with low incomes. And they're highlighted because they focus on rural public transit, which is often non-existent or under-resourced. And you'll be hearing more about this really interesting initiative during the panel discussion. We're lucky to have Renata Tweedy here today, who's representing Southwest Nova Transit, which is one of the 19 members of the RTA. So just to wrap up then, at first glance, it may seem like cycling is overrepresented, but it's likely a really legitimate response to the lack of safe cycling infrastructure across the country. And secondly, it's also probably not surprising that half of the community initiatives are focused on the urban environment, which is important because that's where a large number of Canadians live. And then finally, the focus on equity deserving groups, which we also found interesting. On the one hand, initiatives that are open to all are one way of being inclusive, but there's also a need for a focus on equity deserving groups who are at the most at risk of experiencing transport poverty. So it's really, we were really very pleased to see how many initiatives are placing that specific focus. So in terms of next steps for this project, David will be telling you more about the community practice that's coming up. We also will be preparing an annual report to provide a summary of the lessons learned in the community practice and to continue to share examples of interesting community initiatives. So this is really something that we hope will be a resource